The galaxy had known war for as long as anyone could remember. Empires rose and fell. Species conquered and were conquered. Blood spilled across 1,000 worlds, and the stars themselves seemed to burn with endless conflict. But there was one species that had stopped fighting. Humanity. For 2,000 years, Earth had remained silent. The humans had put down their weapons. They had closed their war factories. They had sent their soldiers home and told them to become farmers and teachers instead. The galaxy watched this happen and could not believe it. It had not always been this way. Long ago, humans were feared. They built warships that could crack planets in half. They created weapons that other species could not even understand. When humanity went to war, entire civilizations disappeared. The old records spoke of human generals who conquered star systems before breakfast and destroyed fleets before dinner. Admiral Park was the last of these warriors. She was an old woman with gray hair and tired eyes when she gave her final order. Standing on the bridge of her flagship, she looked out at the largest fleet ever assembled by any species. 40,000 warships waited for her command. "Seal them away," she said. Her officers stared at her. They thought she had gone mad. "Admiral," her second-in-command said carefully, "these ships represent everything we are, everything we have built. You cannot simply—" "I can," Park replied, "and I will take them to Europa, put them in the ice vaults, lock the doors, and pray that no one ever has to open them again." The fleet moved to Europa, one of Jupiter's frozen moons. Deep beneath the ice, humanity had built massive underground hangars. One by one, the warships descended into darkness. The vault doors, each one 100 meters thick, closed behind them. Admiral Park watched until the last ship disappeared. Then she removed her military coat and dropped it on the ground. "We are gardeners now," she announced to the watching galaxy. "Not soldiers, never again soldiers." The other species laughed at first. They thought it was a trick. Surely the humans were planning something. Surely they were building secret weapons. Surely this peace was just a disguise. But years passed, then decades, then centuries. The humans did not attack anyone. They did not threaten anyone. They shared their farming knowledge freely. They gave away technology that could grow food on dead worlds. They opened their borders to refugees from every corner of the galaxy. And they built orphanages. This was perhaps the strangest thing of all. On dozens of worlds, humans constructed homes for children who had lost their families to war. It did not matter what species these children belonged to. It did not matter if their people had once fought against humanity. The humans took them in anyway. The orphanage on 4 was one of the largest. 4 was a small moon orbiting a gas giant near the edge of civilized space. It had green forests and clean rivers and air that smelled like flowers after rain. The humans had chosen this place because it was peaceful, because children could play here without fear. Director had run this orphanage for 37 years. She was 67 years old now, with white hair that she kept in a neat bun and wrinkles around her eyes from smiling too much. The children called her grandmother, and she loved each of them as if they were her own. 847 children lived at the orphanage. They came from 12 different species. Some had scales, some had feathers, some had 4 arms or 3 eyes or skin that changed color with their moods, and many of them were human, children whose parents had died in accidents or from illness, children who had nowhere else to go. Every morning, grandmother walked through the dormitories and woke the children gently. Every evening, she read them stories before bed. She knew all their names. She remembered all their birthdays. She held them when they cried and celebrated when they laughed. "Why do you do this?" a visitor once asked her. "You could have been anything, a scientist, a politician. Why spend your life caring for other people's children?" Grandmother had smiled at this question. "Because someone must," she said simply. "Because every child deserves to be loved. Because this is what humans should be." The orphanage had a small staff. There was a young man of 24 who had volunteered to help after finishing his studies. He taught the older children mathematics and science. There was who managed the kitchens and somehow always had enough food for everyone. There was old Minu Han, who tended the gardens and let the children help him plant seeds. They were not soldiers. They were not warriors. They were just ordinary people trying to do good in a galaxy that often seemed dark. Life on 4 followed a gentle rhythm. The children woke with the sun. They ate breakfast together in the great hall. They attended lessons in the morning and played in the forests during the afternoon. They had dinner as the sun set, and then grandmother would tell them stories about Earth, about blue oceans and white clouds and cities that sparkled at night. "Will we ever see Earth?" the children sometimes asked. "Perhaps," grandmother would reply, "when you are older, when you are ready, Earth will always be there waiting for you." She did not know that far away, in another part of the galaxy, someone was watching. Emperor of the Empire sat on his throne and studied reports about the human orphanages. They were a proud species, tall and strong, with gray skin and eyes like burning coals. They had conquered 60 worlds in the last century. They believed that power was the only truth in the universe. And they were angry. Many of the children in the human orphanages were refugees from conquests. When they attacked a world, the survivors often fled. And somehow, they always seemed to end up in human care. "They are sheltering our enemies," Emperor said to his generals. "These humans, these gardeners, they are taking in the children of those who resist us. They are raising them, teaching them, giving them hope." "Perhaps we should leave them alone," one general suggested carefully. "The humans have powerful friends, the Galactic Council." "The Galactic Council is weak," Emperor spat. "And the humans are weaker. They have no fleet, they have no army, they have forgotten how to fight. What are they going to do? Throw flowers at us?" The generals laughed nervously. Emperor smiled. It was not a kind smile. "We need to send a message to the galaxy. We need to show everyone what happens to those who interfere with the Empire. And what better message than this? We will destroy a human orphanage. We will show the galaxy that even their precious gardeners are not safe from us." He pointed at the map. His finger landed on 4. "That one," he said. "Destroy it, kill everyone inside, make sure the whole galaxy sees." On 4, grandmother was reading a bedtime story to the youngest children. She had no idea what was coming. None of them did. The stars outside the window twinkled peacefully, giving no warning of the darkness that was about to descend. The morning began like any other morning on 4. Grandmother woke before the sun rose. She liked this quiet time when the world was still and peaceful, when she could walk through the gardens and watch the sky turn from black to purple to gold. The air was cool and fresh. Birds sang in the trees. Everything seemed perfect. She went to the kitchen where was already preparing breakfast. The smell of fresh bread filled the air. "Good morning, Director," said with a warm smile. "Good morning. The children will be hungry today. We had that long hike yesterday. I have made extra, and some sweet cakes for the little ones." Grandmother smiled. This was her world. Simple pleasures, happy children, good food and kind people. She had dedicated her life to building this place, and she was proud of what they had created together. At 7 o'clock, the wake-up bell rang. Soon the dormitories were full of noise and activity. Children of all species tumbled out of bed, washed their faces, put on their clothes. The older ones helped the younger ones. This was the rule at the orphanage. Everyone helped everyone. Gathered his students for the morning lesson. He was teaching them about the history of the galaxy today. The children sat in neat rows, their eyes bright with curiosity. 2,000 years ago, told them, humans were very different. We built great warships. We fought in many battles, but then we decided to stop. We decided that peace was better than war. A young girl raised her hand. She was gray-skinned like the Emperor's people, but she had been abandoned as a baby and raised here in the orphanage. Her name was different from her birth name. She had chosen to be called Sora. "Why did the humans stop fighting?" Sora asked. "Were they scared?" Shook his head. "No, Sora, they were not scared. They were tired, tired of hurting others, tired of being hurt. They looked at all the destruction they had caused and they said, 'No more.' Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is put down your weapon." The lesson continued. Outside, the sun climbed higher. The day grew warm. Children played in the fields. Everything was normal. Everything was peaceful. No one noticed the shadows crossing the sun. High above 12 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They were massive vessels, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a city. Commander stood on the bridge of the lead ship and looked down at the peaceful moon below. "There it is," he said, "the human orphanage." His second officer seemed uncomfortable. "Commander, are we certain about this? These are children. They are not soldiers." Turned to look at him with cold eyes. "Are you questioning the Emperor's orders?" "No, Commander, The Emperor has spoken. These humans think they can shelter our enemies without consequence. They think their peace makes them untouchable. Today we prove them wrong. Today we show the galaxy what happens to those who oppose us." The second officer said nothing more. Opened a communication channel to all ships. "Begin the descent. Remember, no survivors. The Emperor wants this to be a message." The warships began to fall toward 4. On the ground, Grandmother was in her office, reviewing supply requests. They needed more blankets for the winter, more medicine for the hospital wing, more teachers for the growing number of children. She made careful notes, planning for the future. The first alarm came from the communication tower. "Director," Minuhan's voice crackled through the speakers. "Director, there are ships, warships, coming down from orbit." Grandmother's blood turned cold. She ran to the window and looked up at the sky. There they were, 12 dark shapes descending through the clouds, growing larger every second. She knew immediately what they were. Ships. She recognized the design from the war reports she had seen over the years. For a moment she could not move. Fear gripped her heart. But then she thought of the children, 847 children who depended on her, who trusted her, who called her grandmother. "Sound the emergency alarm," she said, her voice steady despite her terror. "Get all children to the underground shelters, now." The alarm began to wail. Staff members ran through the buildings, gathering children, guiding them toward the shelter entrances. The older children helped carry the younger ones. Everyone moved quickly but without panic. They had practiced this drill many times. But Grandmother knew the truth. Their shelters were built for natural disasters, storms and earthquakes. They were not designed to survive orbital bombardment. She found in the main hall, helping a group of crying children. She said quietly, pulling him aside, "I need you to do something. Go to the communication room. There is an emergency broadcast system. Send a message to Earth. Show them what is happening here. The galaxy must see this." His face was pale. "Director, what about you?" "I will stay with the children. Someone must. Now go." Ran toward the communication tower. The ships landed in a wide circle around the orphanage. Soldiers poured out, hundreds of them, armed with weapons that glowed with deadly energy. They formed ranks and began to march toward the main building. Grandmother walked out to meet them. She stood alone in front of the main gate. Behind her, she could hear children crying, staff members shouting, the sound of feet running toward shelters that would not save them. Commander approached her. He was tall and terrible, his gray skin marked with ritual scars, his eyes burning with contempt. "You are the director of this place?" he asked. "I am," Grandmother replied. Her voice did not shake. "My name is, I have run this orphanage for 37 years. I have cared for thousands of children in that time, children of every species, including your own people. You shelter our enemies, said. I shelter children. They are not enemies. They are not soldiers. They are children who have lost everything. They have no parents, no homes. They have done nothing wrong. They exist, replied. That is enough. The Emperor has decreed that this place must be destroyed. You have been interfering with affairs for too long. Today that ends. Grandmother spread her arms wide. Then you will have to go through me. Laughed. It was an ugly sound. Old woman, do you think you can stop us? You have no weapons, you have no army, you have nothing. I have my body, grandmother said simply, and I will not move. In the communication tower, his hands shook as he activated the emergency broadcast system. He pointed the camera at the scene below, the old woman standing alone before an army, the warships looming overhead, the soldiers raising their weapons. This is 4, he said into the microphone. We are under attack. Forces are attacking our orphanage. There are 847 children here. Please help us. Please. Commander grew tired of waiting. Kill her, he said. A single energy blast struck grandmother in the chest. She fell backward, her arms still spread wide, still trying to protect the children behind her. She was dead before she hit the ground. The soldiers marched forward. The main building began to burn. The shelters were breached one by one, kept broadcasting until a blast destroyed the communication tower with him inside. His final broadcast was 17 seconds long. The massacre lasted for 3 hours. When it was over, the orphanage was nothing but ash and rubble. 824 children were dead. Most of the staff was dead. The gardens where Minuhan had taught children to plant seeds were burned black. But 23 children survived. A merchant ship passing through the system had detected the attack. The captain, against all safety protocols, had descended to the surface during the chaos. His crew pulled survivors from the rubble, 23 children, injured and traumatized, but alive. Among them was Sora, the young girl who had asked why humans stopped fighting. Commander did not care about the survivors. 23 out of 800 was close enough to complete. He ordered his ships to lift off. The mission was complete. 6 hours later, his broadcast reached Earth. In city after city, screens flickered to life. People stopped what they were doing. They gathered in streets, in homes, in offices. They watched an old woman spread her arms to protect children. They watched her fall. They watched fire consume everything. And something changed. Something deep and ancient stirred in the hearts of humanity. Something they had buried for 2,000 years. Something they had hoped never to feel again. The galaxy was about to remember why humans had chosen peace. Because when humans chose war, civilizations ended. The broadcast spread across Earth like fire through dry grass. In Seoul, a 94-year-old man named Shin was eating breakfast when the emergency signal interrupted his morning news. He had been a general once, long ago, one of the last officers to serve under Admiral Park before the Great Disarmament. For 60 years, he had tried to forget those days. He had become a school teacher. He had raised children and he had told himself that the warrior inside him was dead. But as he watched grandmother fall, something stirred. His hands, which had grown weak and spotted with age, stopped shaking. His eyes, which had grown dim and tired, became sharp again. Without saying a word, he stood up from his breakfast table and walked to his closet. In the back, behind old coats and forgotten boxes, hung a military uniform. He had not touched it in 60 years. He put it on, it still fit. Across the world, the same scene repeated itself. In Lagos, a woman named watched the broadcast on her phone while waiting for a bus. Her grandmother had been a pilot in Earth's last war, had grown up hearing stories about those days, but she had never believed them. Humans fighting, humans killing. It seemed like a fairy tale from a darker time. Now she understood. The fairy tale was real, and it was waking up. In Mumbai, in Oslo, in Cairo, in Tokyo, everywhere people stopped what they were doing. Factories fell silent, streets became empty. Everyone was watching, everyone was remembering. The United Earth Parliament held an emergency session within 3 hours of the broadcast. The Parliament building in Geneva was designed to be peaceful. It had white walls and large windows and gardens full of flowers. Representatives from every nation on Earth sat in a circular chamber, surrounded by symbols of peace and cooperation. Today, the mood was different. Speaker walked to the central podium. She was a small woman with silver hair and a soft voice, known for her skill at bringing people together. She had spent her career building bridges, finding compromises, helping enemies become friends. But when she spoke today, her voice was not soft. "I will not play the broadcast again," she said. "You have all seen it. You all know what happened on 824 children, 47 staff members, including director who gave her life trying to protect them." The chamber was absolutely silent. For 2,000 years we chose peace. We put down our weapons. We opened our doors. We became gardeners, teachers, healers. We showed the galaxy that humanity could be gentle, that we could love instead of hate, that we could build instead of destroy. She paused. Her hands gripped the edges of the podium. "And they burned our children." A murmur ran through the chamber. Representatives shifted in their seats. Some were crying, some were angry, all of them were waiting. "The Empire has made a mistake," Speaker continued. "They looked at our peace and saw weakness. They looked at our mercy and saw fear. They thought that because we chose not to fight, we could not fight." She turned to face the chamber directly. They were wrong. The vote took place immediately. There was no debate. There was no argument. Every representative voted the same way. For the first time in 2,000 years, Earth declared war. News of the declaration reached every corner of human civilization within minutes. On colonies across a dozen star systems, humans looked up at the sky and felt something change. The long sleep was over. Beneath the frozen surface of Europa, the vault doors began to open. Commander Park was 34 years old. She had been a civilian administrator, helping to manage shipping routes between Earth's colonies. She had never fired a weapon. She had never commanded a ship. She had never even thought about war. She was also the great-great-granddaughter of Admiral Park. When the Parliament called her name, she did not understand why. "We need a leader," Speaker explained. "Someone who carries the weight of our history. Someone who remembers what we were and understands what we must become again. Your ancestor built that fleet. Your ancestor locked it away. Now we need you to wake it up." Stared at her. "I am not a soldier." "Neither were we," Speaker replied, "until today." The journey to Europa took 6 hours. Made it alone in a small transport ship trying to understand what was happening. She had grown up hearing stories about her famous ancestor. Admiral Park, the woman who ended an era, the woman who chose peace, now was being asked to undo everything her ancestor had done. She landed on Europa's frozen surface as the last vault door finished opening. Engineers and technicians were everywhere, preparing systems that had been dormant for 2. Lights flickered on in tunnels that had known only darkness. Machines hummed to life. It was like watching a giant wake from a deep sleep. An old man met her at the entrance to the main hangar. He wore a military uniform that looked ancient but somehow still pressed and clean. His name tag read General Shin. "You are Park's descendant," he said. It was not a question. "I am," replied, "and you are." "Shin, I served under your ancestor. I was young then, just a lieutenant. I helped her seal these ships away." He paused. "I never thought I would see them again." He led her into the hangar, and his breath caught in her throat. The ships were beautiful. Even after 2,000 years, they gleamed like new. Row after row of warships stretched into the darkness, cruisers and battleships and carriers and destroyers. 40,000 vessels, each one a masterpiece of engineering, each one carrying weapons that could crack moons and shatter planets. Why, whispered, why did she build all this just to lock it away? Because she hoped we would never need it, General Shin replied. She hoped that peace would become permanent, that humanity would never have to remember what we could do. He shook his head slowly. She was wrong. They walked in silence through the hangar. Technicians were climbing over ships, running diagnostics, activating systems. The air hummed with power. I do not know how to lead an army, finally said. I do not know how to fight a war. I have spent my whole life believing that violence was wrong. General Shin stopped walking. He turned to face her. Violence is wrong, he said quietly. War is terrible. The things we are about to do will haunt us forever. I know this because I remember what we did before. I remember the planets we destroyed, the lives we ended. I have nightmares about it still. Then why, asked, why are we doing this? Because grandmother stood alone in front of an army to protect children who were not even her own, General Shin replied. Because she spread her arms and refused to move. Because they killed her anyway. And because if we do not respond, then her death means nothing. Every orphanage in the galaxy becomes a target. Every act of kindness becomes a weakness to exploit. He put his hand on her shoulder. We are not doing this because we want war. We are doing this because we want peace. Real peace. Peace that is respected. Peace that the galaxy understands we have chosen. Not peace that others think we have no choice but to accept. Looked at the fleet around her. 40,000 ships. The power to destroy civilizations. All of it waiting for her command. What if I make mistakes? She asked. You will, General Shin said. We all will. That is what war is, mistakes and death and horror, but we will make them together. And when it is over, we will seal these ships away again. We will return to our gardens and our schools and our orphanages. We will try to forget, just like we did before. He saluted her. Fleet Admiral Park, your ships await. Looked at the old general. She thought about grandmother. She thought about the children who had died. She thought about the 23 survivors who would carry those memories forever. She straightened her shoulders. Wake them up, she said. Wake them all up. The fleet began to rise. Across the galaxy, sensors detected the energy signatures. In command centers on 100 worlds, officers stared at their screens in disbelief. Something impossible was happening. Something that should not exist was emerging from beneath Europa's ice. The Empire had wanted to send a message. Earth was sending one back. Admiral of the Imperial Navy had served his emperor for 40 years. He had commanded fleets in a dozen wars. He had conquered worlds and crushed rebellions and brought glory to his people. He was not a man who knew fear. But when his censor officer reported what was coming, felt something cold crawl down his spine. That is impossible, he said, staring at the readings. Run the scan again. I have run it 12 times, Admiral. The readings are accurate, 40,000 vessels, all of them heavily armed, all of them heading this way. The humans have no fleet. We confirmed this. Our spies confirmed this. They dismantled their military 2,000 years ago. Apparently, the censor officer said quietly, they did not destroy it, they only hid it. Turned to look out the main. In the distance, beyond the border outposts, space itself seemed to shimmer. Shadows moved against the stars. The human fleet was emerging from faster-than-light travel, thousands of ships appearing like ghosts rising from graves. All stations to battle alert, ordered. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. Contact the Emperor, tell him we have a problem. On the bridge of this promise, Fleet Admiral Park watched the border grow closer. The ship was massive, 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that had been designed in a darker age. Around her, officers worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. Most of them were civilians like her, trained in the past 2 weeks for a war they never wanted. Captain Lee stood at her side. He was her tactical officer, a man who had studied ancient warfare as an academic hobby and now found himself putting that knowledge to practical use. His face was calm, but his eyes moved constantly, tracking data on a dozen screens. Border outposts detected, he reported. 14 stations, military installations, they are powering weapons. Nodded, open a channel, all frequencies. The communication officer made the connection. Channel open, Admiral. Stepped forward. She had practiced this speech 100 times, but her heart still pounded in her chest. Somewhere out there, the beings who had killed grandmother were listening. The beings who had burned an orphanage full of children. The beings who thought humanity was weak. "This is Fleet Admiral Park of the United Earth Stellar Navy," she said. Her voice carried across the void, broadcast on every frequency in the system. "You attacked an orphanage. You murdered children. You killed grandmother, a woman who had dedicated her life to caring for those who had no one else." She paused. "We are not here to negotiate. We are not here to conquer. We are not here to start an empire. We are here to remind the galaxy why humanity chose peace." She raised her hand. "And what we are capable of when we do not." The first border station opened fire. Energy beams lanced through space toward the human fleet. They were powerful weapons, strong enough to destroy civilian ships, strong enough to break through most military shields. They splashed harmlessly against this promise, without leaving a mark. "Looked at. Return fire," she said. "Minimum force. Disable their weapons and communications." The order was carried out in seconds. Human ships that had been built 2,000 years ago by a species that had mastered war, responded with surgical precision. They did not blast the stations into dust. They targeted specific systems: power generators, weapon arrays, communication towers. One by one, the border stations went dark. "All 14 outposts disabled," reported. "No casualties. Their crews are still alive." Across the fleet, similar reports came in. Human ships were engaging patrols and defense platforms. Every engagement ended the same way: weapons neutralized, communications cut, but no lives taken. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. This was not how war was supposed to work. When you attacked an enemy, you destroyed them. You burned their ships. You killed their crews. You showed no mercy because mercy was weakness. But the humans were different. General Shin stood at side, observing the battle. His old eyes missed nothing. "You are being merciful," he noted. "I am being precise," replied. "We did not come here to kill. We came here to deliver a message. And if they do not receive that message, if they continue to fight, turn to look at him. Then we will do what must be done, but not before we give them every chance to stop. Not before we show them that we are not like them. We do not burn orphanages. We do not murder children. Even now, even in war, we are still who we chose to be." The human fleet pressed forward. Defensive lines crumbled before them, not because they were destroyed, but because they were disabled, left floating helplessly in space while human ships sailed past. Commander received the news aboard his flagship. He was the one who had led the attack on 4. He was the one who had given the order to kill grandmother. Now, he watched his empire's defenses collapse like paper walls in a storm. "They cannot be this powerful," he said. "It is impossible. They are farmers, teachers, they build orphanages. They are not warriors." His second officer, the one who had questioned the attack on 4, spoke quietly. "Perhaps that is exactly why they are so powerful, Commander. Perhaps they became farmers and teachers because they knew what they were capable of, and they did not like it." Struck him across the face. "Coward, rally our forces. We will meet them at the gap. The terrain there favors defense. We will stop them." But the human fleet did not attack the gap. Instead, they went around it. They moved through space with perfect coordination, 40,000 ships acting as one. They appeared where they were not expected. They vanished before they could be engaged. They struck at supply lines and communication nodes, never killing, always disabling. Within 3 days, the border territories were isolated. Within 5 days, their reinforcement routes were cut. Within a week, half of their defensive fleet was floating dead in space, their crews unharmed but helpless, waiting for rescue ships that could not reach them. Emperor watched from his throne world as his empire came apart. "Send everything," he ordered. "Every ship we have, stop them at any cost." The Imperial fleet, 8,000 warships, the largest force ever assembled by the Empire, gathered around the throne world. They formed a defensive sphere, overlapping their shields, coordinating their weapons. It was a fortress in space, impenetrable, unbreakable. Admiral commanded this final defense. He stood on his bridge and watched the human fleet approach. 40,000 ships against his 8,000. He knew the numbers were bad, but numbers were not everything. Terrain mattered, tactics mattered, will mattered. "Hold position," he ordered. "Make them come to us, make them bleed for every kilometer." The human fleet stopped. For a long moment, nothing happened. The two forces faced each other across the void. 8,000 ships, ready to die for their emperor. 40,000 human ships, carrying the memory of children burned alive. Then Admiral Park made her move. "Deploy the silence protocol," she said. Lee hesitated. "Admiral, that weapon was never used, even in the old wars. It was considered too dangerous." "I know," replied. "I have read the records. It tears holes in space itself. It can scatter a fleet across light years. It can break formations that would otherwise take months to defeat. And you want to use it." Looked at the defensive sphere. 8,000 ships full of living beings, fathers and mothers and children of their own, beings who were following orders just like soldiers everywhere. "I want to end this quickly," she said. "I want to minimize death. The silence protocol will scatter them. It will leave them helpless and confused. And then we can go straight to the Emperor without fighting through every single one of them." She turned to face her crew. "I did not come here to kill. I came here to deliver justice. Let the protocol be our message. Let the galaxy see that even in war, humans choose the path that spills the least blood." The order was given. Across the human fleet, strange devices activated. They were old, 2,000 years old, and no one living fully understood how they worked. They targeted gravity wells. They created localized spatial tiers. They bent the fabric of space itself. The defensive sphere vanished. Not destroyed, scattered. 8,000 ships flung across 7 different star systems, their crews alive but completely disoriented, their communications severed, their formations broken. What had been an impenetrable wall became dust in the wind. Admiral found himself alone in empty space, his ship tumbling through a star system he did not recognize. His fleet was gone. His communications were dead. He was helpless. The human fleet advanced on the throne world without opposition. And on his throne, Emperor watched them come. He had wanted to send a message to the galaxy. He had wanted to show them the power of the Empire. Instead, he had woken a sleeping giant. And now that giant was at his door. The throne world of the Empire was called Prime. It was a beautiful world, purple mountains and silver oceans and cities that gleamed like jewels under 3 suns. For 1,000 years, it had been the center of an empire that ruled through fear and force. Its people had never known defeat. They had never been conquered. Today, human ships filled their sky. Emperor stood on his balcony and watched them descend. 40,000 vessels blotting out the light, their shadows falling across his palace like the hand of death. His guards stood around him, weapons ready, but there was nothing they could do. The human fleet had disabled every planetary defense in minutes. Their technology was beyond anything the possessed. "How?" the Emperor whispered. "How is this possible?" His chief advisor, a old female named, stood beside him. She was one of the few who had advised against attacking the orphanage. Now she watched her fears come true. They did not become peaceful because they were weak, she said quietly. They became peaceful because they were strong, so strong that they frightened themselves. They locked away their weapons and tried to become something better, and we reminded them of what they were. They are monsters, spat. Are they? Asked. Our fleet is scattered but alive. Our border outposts were disabled but not destroyed. Their crews are waiting for rescue, not dead. The humans have killed no one, my emperor, not a single person. Even now, with the power to burn our world to ash, they hold back. Then what do they want? Justice replied, I imagine. A human shuttle descended toward the palace. It was small, barely large enough for a handful of people. It landed in the courtyard where the emperor held his great ceremonies, where he had once watched prisoners executed for his amusement. The shuttle door opened. Admiral Park stepped out. She wore a simple uniform, no medals, no decorations, nothing to show her rank except the way she carried herself. Behind her came two guards, both unarmed. General Shin had wanted to send a full security detail but had refused. This is not about strength, she had told him. They already know we are strong. This is about showing them who we are. Emperor met her in his throne room. It was a massive chamber, walls covered in gold, ceiling painted with scenes of conquest, a throne carved from a single massive gemstone. The emperor sat on that throne, surrounded by his guards, trying to look powerful. He did not look powerful, he looked afraid. Walked toward him alone. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. Every guard in the room had their hands on their weapons, ready to strike, but none of them moved. They had seen what human technology could do. They knew that killing this woman would mean the death of everyone on the planet. Stopped at the base of the throne. Emperor, she said, her voice was calm, do you know why I am here? You are here to destroy us, replied. His voice shook slightly. To conquer our empire, to take revenge for your orphanage. Shook her head. I am here because of a woman named. She was 67 years old. She had white hair and kind eyes and a smile that made children feel safe. She ran an orphanage on a moon called 4. She cared for 847 children, children of every species, including children. Children whose parents had been killed in wars started by people like you. She took a step closer. When your ships came, she walked outside, alone, unarmed. She stood in front of your soldiers and spread her arms wide. She knew she could not stop them. She knew she would die. But she stood there anyway because that was who she was. That was what humans can be. Said nothing. Your soldiers killed her. Then they killed the children she was protecting, 824 of them. The youngest was 4 months old. His name was, he had just learned to smile. His voice remained steady, but her eyes were bright with tears. You wanted to send a message to the galaxy. You wanted to show everyone that the Empire was powerful, that no one could stand against you, that even peaceful humans were not safe from your wrath. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a photograph. It showed grandmother surrounded by children, children of all species, all colors, all shapes. She was smiling. They were all smiling. Placed the photograph on the emperor's throne. This is my message, she said. This woman, these children, they are what matters, not your empire, not your power, not your throne made of gemstone or your ceiling painted with conquest. These lives, these smiles, this is what we are fighting for. Emperor stared at the photograph. For a long moment he could not speak. You could destroy my entire civilization, he finally said. You have the power, I have seen it. Why do you not? Looked at him sadly. Because that would make us like you, she replied. And we spent 2,000 years trying to be different. We spent 2,000 years building orphanages instead of warships, teaching instead of conquering, healing instead of hurting. We chose peace. We chose to be gardeners. She paused. But you should understand something, Emperor. We chose peace. It was a choice, and choices can be changed. If you threaten our children again, if anyone threatens our children, we will change that choice. We will become what we used to be, and you have seen in these past weeks what that looks like. The Emperor's chief advisor stepped forward. "What do you want?" she asked. "Name your terms." Turned to face her. "We want 3 things. First, you will release every refugee from every world you have conquered. They will be given safe passage to wherever they wish to go. Second, you will provide resources to rebuild every orphanage, every school, every hospital that your forces have damaged in your wars of conquest. Third, you," she pointed at the Emperor, "will stand before the Galactic Council and confess what you did on 4. You will name every child who died. You will acknowledge that you killed them." His face twisted with anger. "You want me to humiliate myself before the entire galaxy?" "I want you to take responsibility," replied. "That is not the same thing." "And if I refuse?" Met his eyes. "Then we stop being gardeners, permanently. We rebuild our military. We take up our weapons again. And we make sure that no child anywhere in the galaxy ever has to fear the Empire again." She did not raise her voice. She did not make threats. She simply stated facts. An Emperor believed her. He looked at the photograph on his throne, the smiling woman, the happy children. He had ordered their deaths without a second thought. They had been nothing to him, obstacles to be removed, messages to be sent. Now their faces haunted him. "I accept," he said quietly. The tension in the room broke. Guards lowered their weapons. Advisors began to breathe again, closed her eyes in relief. "There is one more thing," said. "Every year, on the anniversary of the attack, your empire will observe a moment of silence. You will remember grandmother. You will remember the children. You will teach your own children what happened so that they never repeat this mistake." Emperor nodded slowly. Turned to leave, then she stopped. "I have a question for you, Emperor, before I go." "Ask." Why did you attack an orphanage? Of all the targets in the galaxy, why children?" Was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke and his voice was hollow. "Because I thought you would do nothing. Because I thought you were weak. Because I wanted an easy victory that would make me look strong." Nodded, she had expected this answer. "Remember that," she said. "Remember what your cruelty woke up. Remember what your arrogance cost you. And remember that the humans you thought were weak are the ones who now hold your fate in their hands and choose to let you live." She walked out of the throne room without looking back. Behind her, Emperor sat on his gemstone throne, staring at a photograph of a smiling old woman surrounded by children. For the first time in his life, he understood what true strength looked like. It looked like grandmother, spreading her arms to protect children who were not her own. And he, with all his armies and all his warships and all his empire, could never match it.